We live in a world where we've been taught to believe that love is loud, obvious, and relentless. If someone doesn't text back instantly, double message, or flood us with attention, we assume we're being ignored. But here's the truth most people never tell you. Real love doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. And if you know what to listen for, you'll realize that what looks like distance might actually be something much deeper. One of the hidden signs he's in love is that he stays consistent, even when he's not constantly present. He doesn't disappear when things get uncomfortable. He doesn't vanish when life gets busy. He may not be messaging you every hour, but he always comes back to you. Consistency is not about frequency. It's about reliability. Love isn't proved by how often he reaches out, but by the fact that he always does. Another powerful sign is that he creates emotional safety. Around him, you don't feel judged for being yourself. You don't feel like you're performing or auditioning for his attention. He listens, even when the conversation isn't exciting. He remembers details that matter to you. When someone is in love, they want you to feel secure, not anxious. Indifference creates confusion. Love creates calm. Pay attention to how he acts when you need him. Love shows up in moments of inconvenience. When you're overwhelmed, unsure, or vulnerable, he doesn't withdraw. He may not always know the perfect words, but he stays. That presence, that willingness to be there, even when it's uncomfortable, is one of the clearest signs of genuine emotion. Sometimes, love hides behind restraint. A man who truly cares may hold back, not because he doesn't feel enough, but because he feels deeply. Vulnerability is risky. Opening up means risking loss. So instead of rushing, he moves carefully. He protects the connection by not overwhelming it. That caution isn't disinterest, it's investment. Look at how he prioritizes you in his life. Love doesn't always rearrange the world overnight, but it slowly makes space. He includes you in plans. He considers your feelings before making decisions. Even when he's busy, you're not forgotten. Love is not about obsession, it's about consideration. There's also a quiet protectiveness in love, not control, not jealousy, but care. He wants to see you happy, safe, and supported. He doesn't compete with your independence. He respects it. Love doesn't cage you. It gives you room to grow. And perhaps the most overlooked sign of all is time. Love reveals itself over time, not moments. Anyone can be intense for a week. Love stays steady for months. It's patient. It doesn't rush you, test you, or pressure you. It allows the connection to unfold naturally. So, if you're wondering whether he's ignoring you or quietly falling for you, stop listening only to the noise. Start watching the patterns. Love isn't always dramatic, but it is always intentional. And once you learn to recognize that, you'll stop chasing reassurance and start trusting what's real. Silence is one of the most misunderstood signals in modern dating, especially in a world where instant replies are treated like proof of affection. We've been conditioned to believe that if someone isn't constantly reaching out, checking in, or keeping the conversation alive, then their feelings must be fading. But silence does not automatically mean disinterest. In many cases, it means the opposite. It can mean restraint, reflection, or emotional depth that doesn't rely on constant validation. When a man is truly invested, his silence is often purposeful, not careless. There are people who communicate their feelings through words, and there are people who communicate through stability. Someone who is in love but emotionally grounded doesn't need to maintain non-stop contact to feel connected. He isn't driven by anxiety or fear of losing you every moment. Instead, he trusts the bond enough to let it breathe. That silence can be a sign of emotional security, not emotional absence. He knows that connection doesn't disappear just because the phone is quiet. Silence can also come from focus. When a man cares deeply, he may be fully present in what he's doing, whether it's work, personal goals, or handling responsibilities. Rather than sending half-hearted messages, he chooses to show up properly when he does engage. This kind of silence isn't neglect, it's discipline. He values quality over noise, and that often gets misread in a culture that equates availability with affection. Another important truth is that emotional maturity often looks quiet. A man who has experienced disappointment or loss may not express feelings impulsively. He thinks before he speaks. He processes internally. He doesn't rush to fill every gap with words because he understands the weight of them. When he cares, he wants what he says to be real, not reactive. That pause, that silence, is often him making sure he doesn't damage something that matters. Silence can also be protective. When emotions run deep, some people instinctively step back to understand what they're feeling. Love can be disorienting. It brings vulnerability, risk, and uncertainty. Pulling inward for a moment can be a way of regaining balance. This doesn't mean he's pulling away from you. It can mean he's trying to show up better for you. The mistake many people make is assuming that distance equals disinterest, when in reality, it can be the space required for clarity. What truly matters is not silence in isolation, but patterns over time. A man who is not interested disappears completely, avoids responsibility, and leaves confusion behind. A man who cares may go quiet, but he returns. He follows through. He remains consistent in his actions, even if his communication style is not constant. Love isn't proven by how often someone talks to you, but by whether they remain emotionally available when it counts, by whether their presence feels steady rather than chaotic, by whether you feel grounded instead of abandoned, and by whether their silence feels temporary rather than final. One of the biggest misconceptions about love is the belief that it must be expressed through constant communication. We often confuse frequency with feeling, assuming that if someone truly cares, they should always be checking in, texting throughout the day, and keeping a steady stream of interaction alive. But love does not measure itself by how often someone reaches out. It measures itself by how consistently someone shows up over time. Consistency is not about being everywhere in your life at once, but about being dependable in the moments that matter. A man who is genuinely in love does not disappear when things become inconvenient or when the initial excitement settles. Instead, he maintains a steady presence that you can rely on. He may not always initiate conversations every day, but when he says he will call, he does. When plans are made, he follows through. When you need clarity or reassurance, he doesn't avoid the conversation. This kind of consistency creates trust, and trust is the foundation of lasting attraction and emotional safety. Constant contact can sometimes be driven by insecurity rather than affection. When someone needs to be in touch all the time, it may come from fear of losing the connection rather than confidence in it. Consistent love, on the other hand, is calm. It doesn't panic when there is space. It doesn't test the relationship by pulling away dramatically or flooding you with attention. It understands that real connection strengthens when both people are allowed to live their lives while still choosing each other. Consistency also shows in emotional behavior, not just actions. A man who cares deeply is emotionally predictable in the best way. You don't feel like you're walking on eggshells or guessing where you stand. His mood towards you doesn't swing wildly based on his day or his stress level. Even when he's tired or distracted, his respect remains. That emotional steadiness is often a stronger sign of love than passionate words or dramatic gestures. Over time, consistency builds a sense of security that constant communication alone never can. Knowing that someone will show up, even if they're not always visible, allows you to relax into the connection. You stop monitoring your phone. You stop analyzing every pause. Instead, you start trusting the rhythm of the relationship. That rhythm may not be loud or intense, but it is reliable. Love that lasts is rarely noisy. It doesn't demand attention at every moment. It proves itself quietly through repetition, through promises kept, and through effort that doesn't fade when the novelty wears off. When someone chooses consistency over constant contact, they are choosing depth over distraction, stability over performance, and intention over impulse, and that kind of love has a way of growing stronger the longer it is allowed to exist. One of the clearest signs of genuine love is not how much attention someone gives you, but how safe you feel around them. Attention can be exciting, flattering, and intense, but emotional safety is calming, grounding, and deeply reassuring. When a man is truly in love, his presence doesn't leave you anxious or uncertain. Instead, it allows you to relax into who you are, knowing that you don't have to earn his affection by being perfect, entertaining, or constantly agreeable. Emotional safety shows up in the way he listens to you. He doesn't dismiss your feelings or make you feel foolish for having them. Even when he doesn't fully understand your perspective, he tries to. He gives you space to express yourself without turning the conversation into a debate or a defense of his own ego. Love creates an environment where vulnerability feels welcome rather than risky, and that sense of being heard is far more meaningful than being constantly noticed. Another aspect of emotional safety is predictability. When someone loves you, their behavior toward you is steady. You don't feel like you're being punished with silence or rewarded with affection based on how well you perform. You know where you stand, even during moments of disagreement. This kind of stability allows trust to grow naturally. Attention can fluctuate depending on mood, stress, or circumstance, but emotional safety remains consistent because it is rooted in respect. Love also creates safety by allowing you to be imperfect. You don't feel pressure to impress or to hide parts of yourself out of fear that they will push him away. You can share your doubts, your fears, and even your mistakes without worrying that they will be used against you later. When a man is in love, he doesn't keep score. He doesn't weaponize vulnerability. Instead, he treats your openness as something to protect, not exploit. Emotional safety is also reflected in how conflict is handled. Disagreements don't turn into power struggles or emotional withdrawal. Even when tensions rise, there is a say, and the connection itself is not under threat. He doesn't make you feel like love is conditional or temporary. That reassurance allows you to address issues honestly rather than suppressing them out of fear of losing him. While attention can be thrilling, it often comes and goes. Emotional safety endures. It creates a quiet confidence in the relationship that doesn't rely on constant reassurance. You feel secure even when you're apart because you trust the foundation you've built together. This kind of love doesn't overwhelm you with intensity, but it supports you with steadiness, allowing you to grow, to speak freely, and to be fully yourself without fear of abandonment or judgment, which is why emotional safety is often the strongest and most reliable sign that love is truly present. Words can be persuasive, charming, and emotionally charged, but they are also easy to offer without real intention. Actions, on the other hand, require effort, consistency, and follow-through, which is why they reveal a man's true priorities far more clearly than anything he says. When someone is genuinely in love, his behavior naturally aligns with what matters most to him. He may not always express his feelings perfectly, but the way he acts tells a clearer and more honest story. A man's priorities are visible in how he allocates his time and energy. Time is the one resource that cannot be faked or replenished, and people instinctively invest it in what they value. When a man cares deeply, you are not an afterthought squeezed into empty moments. He makes room for you even when life is demanding. That doesn't mean he abandons his responsibilities, but it does mean he integrates you into his life rather than keeping you on the sidelines. Actions also reveal how seriously he takes your emotional well-being. A man who is in love pays attention to how his behavior affects you. He notices when something bothers you and makes an effort to adjust, not because he is being controlled, but because your feelings matter to him. This willingness to be considerate is not performative. It shows up quietly in the choices he makes, in the boundaries he respects, and in the way he protects the connection from unnecessary harm. Another powerful indicator is reliability. Anyone can make promises in the heat of emotion, but love is demonstrated by consistency over time. When he says he will do something, he follows through. When he makes a commitment, he honors it. Even in small moments, this dependability builds trust and shows that you are a priority, not just when it is convenient, but as a constant presence in his life. Actions also speak through how he handles challenges. When obstacles arise, a man who is invested does not retreat or avoid responsibility. He looks for solutions. He communicates rather than disappearing. He stays engaged even when things are uncomfortable. This resilience in the face of difficulty reveals a level of commitment that words alone can never match. What makes actions so meaningful is that they are rooted in choice. Love is not just a feeling, it is a series of decisions made repeatedly. Each time he chooses to show up, to listen, to support, or to make space for you, he is reinforcing where you stand in his life. Over time, these choices form a pattern that speaks louder than declarations of affection, showing not only that he cares, but that you genuinely matter in the structure of his world, in the rhythm of his days, and in the way he moves through life with intention and consistency that cannot be faked. Love is often portrayed as dramatic, intense, and overflowing with grand gestures, but in reality, the most authentic form of love is usually quiet, steady, and intentional. When a man is genuinely in love, he doesn't feel the need to constantly prove it through exaggerated actions or overwhelming attention. Instead, his feelings are expressed through a calm and reliable presence that grows stronger with time. This kind of love doesn't rush or demand validation. It simply exists with purpose. Quiet love is rooted in certainty. A man who feels secure in his emotions doesn't chase highs or create chaos to feel connected. He isn't hot one day and cold the next. His affection doesn't fluctuate based on mood or external pressure. There is a steadiness in how he treats you, a sense that his care is not temporary or conditional. This consistency can sometimes be mistaken for boredom or lack of passion, but in truth, it reflects emotional depth and maturity. Intentional love shows up in thoughtful choices rather than impulsive reactions. He pays attention to what matters to you and acts accordingly. He remembers small details, not because he is trying to impress you, but because he genuinely values your experiences and feelings. His effort is not loud or performative. It is practical, meaningful, and aligned with building something real rather than creating momentary excitement. Steady love also respects pacing. When someone is truly invested, they don't try to force intimacy or rush the connection to meet their own needs. They allow the relationship to unfold naturally, giving both people the space to feel safe and secure. This patience is a sign of care, not hesitation. He is not dragging his feet, he is laying a foundation strong enough to last. Another aspect of quiet love is emotional availability without pressure. He is there when you need support, but he doesn't overwhelm you with constant presence. He trusts the bond enough to allow independence while remaining emotionally connected. This balance creates a sense of partnership rather than dependency, where both individuals feel valued and respected. Because this type of love doesn't seek attention, it is often overlooked. It doesn't announce itself or demand recognition. Yet it is the love that endures. It is the love that remains during ordinary days, not just special moments. Over time, its reliability becomes its strength. You begin to feel safe rather than uncertain, grounded rather than anxious. This calm assurance is not the absence of passion, but the presence of commitment. Quiet, steady, intentional love may not always be thrilling at first glance, but it is the kind that builds trust, deepens connection, and creates a lasting bond that grows stronger through consistency, care, and the deliberate choice to show up every single day. Love has a way of exposing the most vulnerable parts of a person, and for many men, vulnerability is not something they were taught to express comfortably. Instead of openly declaring their feelings, they may retreat, hesitate, or act more guarded when their emotions deepen. This is why fear and vulnerability can often disguise affection. What looks like emotional distance or mixed signals can sometimes be the result of someone feeling more than they know how to handle. When a man starts to care deeply, the stakes suddenly feel higher. He is no longer operating in a space where nothing truly matters. There is something to lose. That awareness can trigger fear, especially if he has experienced rejection, betrayal, or emotional pain in the past. Rather than rushing forward, he may slow down, becoming more cautious with his words and actions. This hesitation is not a lack of feeling, but an attempt to protect himself from being hurt again. Vulnerability requires trust, and trust takes time. A man who is falling in love may struggle with the idea of opening up before he feels certain that it is safe. He might hold back emotionally, choosing to observe and assess, rather than fully expose his heart. In doing so, he is trying to maintain control over emotions that feel overwhelming. Love challenges control, and for someone who values emotional self-protection, that can be deeply uncomfortable. Fear can also show up as inconsistency. Moments of closeness may be followed by brief withdrawal, not because his feelings disappear, but because they intensify. When emotions rise, so does the fear of losing independence, making the wrong choice, or being misunderstood. This push and pull dynamic often confuses the other person, but it is rooted in internal conflict rather than manipulation or disinterest. Another reason vulnerability disguises affection is social conditioning. Many men are taught to equate emotional openness with weakness. As a result, they may express care through actions rather than words, or through restraint rather than pursuit. They might show support, protection, and reliability while struggling to articulate what they feel. Their love is present, but it is filtered through a learned resistance to emotional exposure. Understanding this doesn't mean excusing poor behavior or emotional unavailability indefinitely. It means recognizing that love is not always expressed in obvious or perfect ways. Sometimes it is hidden behind silence, caution, or emotional armor. When a man is genuinely in love, his fear is not of you, but of how much you matter to him. That fear can temporarily mask affection, creating confusion, but over time, if the connection feels safe and mutual, vulnerability begins to surface. When it does, it is often deeper and more sincere, because it has been carefully guarded, slowly revealed, and grounded in the desire to build something meaningful rather than fleeting. Something that feels worth the risk of being truly seen and emotionally exposed. When a man is truly invested emotionally, his what naturally extends beyond attraction and into protection of the connection itself. This protection is not about control or possessiveness, but about care, foresight, and responsibility. He becomes mindful of his actions, words, and decisions because he understands that what exists between you is valuable and fragile. Love shifts his focus from short-term gratification to long-term stability, and that shift reveals itself in subtle but powerful ways. Protecting the connection means he avoids behavior that could damage trust. He is conscious of boundaries and respects them, even when no one is watching. He does not engage in actions that would make you feel insecure or question where you stand. This isn't because he is being restricted, but because he doesn't want to risk hurting something he genuinely cares about. When someone is in love, preserving emotional safety becomes more important than momentary impulses. Effort also shows in how he communicates during difficult moments. Rather than withdrawing completely or escalating conflict, he tries to maintain respect and clarity. Even if he needs space, he explains rather than disappearing. He understands that silence without reassurance can cause unnecessary pain, so he becomes more intentional about how he creates distance. This awareness is a form of emotional protection aimed at keeping the bond intact rather than testing its limits. Another way love reveals itself is through accountability. A man who cares deeply does not deflect responsibility when his actions affect you negatively. He is willing to acknowledge mistakes and make adjustments, not out of fear of losing you, but out of a genuine desire to do better. This willingness to self-correct shows that the relationship matters more to him than his pride. Protecting the connection also means making conscious choices about the future. He considers how decisions today will impact what you are building together. Whether it's managing time, balancing priorities, or setting boundaries with others, his effort is guided by an understanding that love requires maintenance. He doesn't take the relationship for granted or assume it will survive without care. Instead, he nurtures it through consistency and thoughtfulness. Perhaps the most telling sign of effort is emotional presence. Even when life becomes overwhelming, he doesn't emotionally abandon the connection. He may not always have solutions, but he stays engaged. He checks in. He remains invested. That presence communicates a powerful message that you are not alone and that the relationship is something he is committed to safeguarding. Love that protects the connection is not loud or dramatic. It is deliberate, respectful, and steady. It prioritizes trust over ego and growth over comfort. Over time, this kind of effort creates a bond that feels secure rather than fragile, supported rather than uncertain, and valued rather than questioned, because it is built on the consistent choice to care for what exists between two people and to treat that connection as something worth preserving, strengthening, and honoring through conscious and sustained effort. When love is real, effort doesn't disappear once attraction is established. Instead, it evolves into something more meaningful, a desire to protect what exists between two people. This protection is subtle but intentional. It shows up in the way a man thinks before he acts, aware that careless behavior could weaken the bond. He becomes conscious not only of what feels good in the moment, but of what preserves trust, respect, and emotional safety over time. One of the clearest signs of this effort is how he handles temptation and external influences. A man who values the connection does not place it in unnecessary danger. He avoids situations that could create doubt or insecurity, not because he is forced to, but because he doesn't want to jeopardize something that matters to him. His loyalty is not performative, it is internal. Even when you are not present, his choices reflect consideration for how they might affect you. Effort also reveals itself in emotional restraint. When conflict arises, he doesn't aim to win at your expense. He chooses his words carefully, understanding that emotional damage can linger long after an argument ends. He may still feel frustration, but he resists the urge to say things he cannot take back. This self-control is a powerful form of care, showing that preserving the connection matters more to him than momentary emotional release. Protecting the relationship also means creating clarity instead of confusion. A man who is invested doesn't leave you guessing where you stand. He understands that uncertainty erodes trust, so he makes an effort to be consistent in his behavior. Even if he struggles to express emotions verbally, his actions remain aligned. He shows up when it matters, he follows through, he doesn't play games with availability or affection. Another sign of effort is how he responds to your vulnerability. When you open up, he doesn't dismiss or minimize what you share. He treats your emotions with care, recognizing that vulnerability is an act of trust. He may not always know how to fix things, but he doesn't retreat from your honesty. Instead, he holds space for it, reinforcing the idea that the connection is safe. Over time, this protective effort creates stability. You feel less need to analyze every interaction because his behavior remains steady. You sense that he is invested not just in you, but in what the two of you are building together. Love expressed this way is not about grand gestures or constant reassurance. It is about sustai, ned attention, thoughtful choices, and the quiet commitment to nurture and defend the bond from harm. When a man puts effort into protecting the connection, he is showing that love is not just something he feels, but something he actively chooses to care for, guard, and grow with intention and emotional responsibility. Love is often misunderstood as something that should be immediately obvious, intense, and unmistakable. But the truth is that real love reveals itself gradually through patterns rather than moments. Anyone can be attentive for a short period, especially at the beginning when excitement is high. What truly matters is what remains when novelty fades and life settles into its normal rhythm. Love is not proven in grand declarations or isolated gestures, but in how consistently someone shows up over time. When a man is genuinely in love, his presence becomes reliable. You begin to notice that he doesn't disappear when things become ordinary or challenging. He stays connected even when there is no immediate reward or excitement. His effort does not peak and crash, it stabilizes. This steady presence creates a sense of trust that grows quietly, without forcing itself into the spotlight. Over time, his actions form a clear pattern that communicates commitment more effectively than words ever could. Consistency over time also reveals intention. A man who is only temporarily interested may be enthusiastic in bursts, but inconsistent in follow-through. In contrast, someone who truly cares integrates you into his life in a lasting way. He remembers what matters to you, adjusts his behavior based on shared experiences, and continues to invest emotionally. This ongoing attention shows that his feelings are not situational, but rooted in a deeper desire to build something meaningful. Love expressed over time also becomes more thoughtful. Instead of impulsive gestures, you see deliberate choices. He considers the future, even in small ways. He becomes mindful of how decisions today will affect the connection tomorrow. This foresight reflects emotional investment and a willingness to think beyond the present moment. Love that endures is not reactive, it is intentional. As time passes, you may also notice that his support becomes more consistent. He doesn't only show up when things are easy or joyful, he remains present during stress, uncertainty, and difficulty. This reliability in both good and challenging moments strengthens the bond and reinforces the sense that the connection is stable and secure. Love that lasts does not avoid discomfort, it withstands it. Perhaps the most powerful aspect of love revealed over time is the sense of emotional grounding it creates. You no longer feel the need to question his intentions constantly. You feel calmer, more secure, and more confident in where you stand. That sense of peace is not accidental. It is the result of repeated actions that align with care, respect, and commitment. Love is not something that needs to announce itself